Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Cameron, and in today's video, I'm going to talk about what I learned from applying to over 1,000 jobs in banking and consulting. So before we go any further in the video, quick disclaimer, definitely clickbait. I did not apply to over 1,000 jobs. It was realistically probably much closer to 50 jobs. Honestly, the process went a lot smoother last time than when I was applying for internships, and I got one of my dream job offers pretty early on. So of course I ended the process of applying to jobs shortly after that. But I still think I have plenty of valuable knowledge to share with you guys today. Definitely still went through quite the process, both for getting my job as well as my internship, and also just helping out a lot of my friends along their own journeys as well. So I've got some good tips in store for you here today, but I feel before I go any further, I need to give a little bit of a background about me in case you're not already subscribed. My name is Cameron Galbraith. I am a senior finance major, graduating here from the University of Florida in 4 days, which is crazy. Last summer, I was a summer analyst for Regions Bank in their treasury group. I decided I didn't want to pursue that role full time, so that's what caused me to go down this path of applying for other jobs. I had a pretty successful recruiting cycle. I had a lot of final round super day interviews. I also got 3 job offers in a span of 1 week. That was a very stressful time for me. First, I got a banking offer from PNC to work out in Los Angeles. Then I got an investment banking support role with Truist in Atlanta. Then third, and finally, I got a consulting role with KPMG for New York City. The role with KPMG is the one I ultimately accepted, and I am so excited to start my career with KPMG in the city of my dreams, New York. So now that you know a little bit more about me and my background, let's get into what I learned from this process. So the first tip, and one that I think could arguably be one of the most important, is to be realistic. What do you think your chances are of getting a top investment banking role with Goldman Sachs in New York City when you go to Florida State? Yes, it is possible, but you have to be realistic with yourself. It's a lot more realistic that you could get an offer for roles that are in your home state. So for us in Florida, there's plenty of options: Miami, Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, plenty more cities. These will still be extremely competitive, but your school will most likely be a more of a target for roles that are hiring in these locations. Most likely the recruiters went to your school, you have more people from your school working in these roles in these locations, and it's just a little bit more realistic than shooting for New York City, where it's often the most competitive role to land. Now again, I'm not trying to be pessimistic, and I'm not telling you not to apply for these. I'm just saying it's really important to be realistic. A lot of the times, firms will only allow you to have 3 or 4 applications per recruiting cycle. So it's important that you don't waste all of these applications on roles that you just don't have a good chance at. I definitely recommend shooting your shot on at least one of those applications. Go for the absolute dream job. But for the other ones, be realistic with yourself. If you really want to be in New York, maybe apply for roles that aren't quite as competitive. Or, if you really want to do investment banking, instead of New York City, apply for Charlotte or Atlanta. For example, instead of applying for investment banking at Goldman Sachs in New York City, instead I applied for a role in the treasury. Because I had an internship this last summer in treasury with Regions, I felt that a lot of the skills would translate. And lo and behold, I did end up getting a super day with Goldman. I did not end up getting the offer from Goldman, but I can certainly tell you I made it a heck of a lot further in the application process for that treasury role than for the shooting my shot role that I applied for. One can definitely be a long shot, but I think that the other applications should be roles that you think you realistically have a good shot at getting. Like I said before, look at cities that are close to your campus. So for us in Florida, like I said, Tampa, Miami, Orlando, also Atlanta and Charlotte are big hubs for UF grads. But if you're in the Midwest, maybe look at Chicago, Indianapolis. You understand what I'm saying. So I think this is kind of one of the issues that I had when I was applying for internships. I was definitely just going for the absolute best roles at all times. And although I'd go to a good school, it just wasn't that realistic. And I think I ended up wasting a lot of my applications because I was shooting for the absolute stars on every single application instead of going for some roles that realistically I had a much better chance at getting, and not just getting an interview for, but also succeeding in the interview. So that is the first tip. And I know it could be a tough pill to swallow, but it is just so important to be realistic with yourself. The second piece of advice is something that I know is really hard for a lot of us to hear, and that is that school matters. if you aren't at a target school or even a regional target school, you really need to be able to prove that you are a qualified candidate for whatever role you're applying for. So this means having a lot of extracurriculars. Maybe you're involved in an investment club, or you have an extremely high GPA, or you have your own self-led pursuits that allow you to kind of stand out. Also, if you're applying from a non-target school, regardless of whatever role it is, it's really important that you have a good GPA. Most applications for top jobs will require a 3.2, 3.3, 3.5, whatever. They'll have a certain requirement for their GPA, so definitely make sure you have it above that level. The fact of the matter is, if you don't go to Harvard, if you don't go to a target school or a regional target, it's gonna make your job a lot harder. But again, it is still possible to get any role that you want. You're just gonna have to show to the recruiter, to the interviewer, that you are qualified. So although I just said that school matters, the one thing that matters even more is networking. I really can't emphasize this enough. I know I mentioned this in my video from last year, but this is something that I really changed a lot with my approach to this current cycle. One of the things I did to really emphasize my networking this time around is on my spreadsheet where I was listing every job I was applying for, I made sure to have columns for each role where I could write in someone that I had connected with and reached out to from that company. This required me to network with at least 2 people for each role I had applied for. So this was a really important step to get me kind of with my foot in the door and propel me to that first introductory phone call or interview. I would always try to reach out to someone currently in the role I was applying for, so maybe it was an analyst or a VP, but I think it's really valuable to reach out to someone who went through the hiring process somewhat recently. They will just have the most to offer you as far as the actual application process, what the interviews are like, and they can just be a really big help to you. Although they might not have a lot of decision-making power, they can definitely kind of lead you in the right direction. One of the things I would do at the end of each of my phone calls is I would ask them if they had any advice for who else I should reach out to, who I should connect with. And a lot of times from there, they would kind of tell me whether it'd be worth it to reach out to a VP, a director, someone higher up. And it really would just give you a great introduction into the role and to the company. A lot of times I would also try to search to see if there was anyone from UF in this role, working for this company, or in the location. I think the Gator Nation is very strong, and I'm sure you could say the same for whatever college you go to. From my experience, pretty much any time I reached out to someone from UF who was, somewhat active on LinkedIn, they always would get back to me, and we always had a great conversation. I think that's another important thing I kind of forgot to mention there, but after I would find the person on LinkedIn, I would then connect with them and send them a quick message asking for a phone call. This phone call didn't have to be anything serious, just something quick and introductory to learn a little bit more about the role or the company. I've got a screenshot up on the screen now of a message I sent to a recent UF grad when I was applying for some roles at PNC, and I said, "Hey there, Marin, I just applied for a few full-time roles in PNC's corporate and institutional banking group, and as a fellow Gator, you looked like the ideal person to reach out to. If you have the time, I'd love to set up a call to learn more about the program and culture at PNC or any other resources for me to study. Thanks, Marin." So it's as simple as that, just a quick, short text. From my experience, anytime someone's actually opened LinkedIn and saw my message, they've always been willing to chat with me, whether they went to UF or not. This PNC situation is actually really cool. I didn't know Marin when she was at UF, but we quickly found out that we had a lot of similar experiences. The conversation went really well, and as I emphasized earlier, at the end of the call, I asked her if she had any other recommendations for people I should reach out to, and luckily enough, she gave me the name of someone else, who then I emailed, set up a phone call with, and had another great conversation. This one really flowed well. We instantly connected over basketball, and we actually had a mutual connection through my fraternity, and pretty much right away, he went so far out of his way. He sent me in the right direction, told me which roles to apply for, gave me a referral, and was just a huge help for that whole process. I ended up getting the offer from PNC, and it was, again, a huge help to him, and I was so grateful for that. And this really just shows the power of networking. If I hadn't first reached out to Marin, I never then would have gotten in connection with Riley, and then I never, would have taken as many steps to get that final offer that I did. So I really hope this story kind of just emphasizes how important networking is. Worst case scenario, the person doesn't respond. Best case scenario, they help you out and they get you that job. The third thing that I learned that is a concept that I've been trying to learn a little bit more about and how to apply into my own life, and that is using your unfair advantages. Here's the thing, life isn't fair. The business world is not fair. What's the point of having unfair advantages if you're not gonna use them? And I know this whole idea is a conversation that could go a million different directions, and not everyone has an unfair advantage. but that's the point. If everyone had the same unfair advantage, it wouldn't be unfair. I truly do believe that everyone has some sort of thing that can separate them apart and makes them unique and valuable in a job application process. This is something that's talked about quite a bit in certain circles. Ali Abdaal, again, one of my favorite productivity YouTubers, talks about it quite a bit. I know there's also a book about the concept, and the whole idea is really just to take advantage of your strengths. Take advantage of what God has blessed you with. So if your parent has connections, use them. If your friend works for a company, ask them for a referral. The idea is that any small advantage can turn into a major advantage pretty fast. So what are your unfair advantages? Definitely consider this, think it through, and make sure to use them and apply them to this whole process. The next thing I learned is something that I probably unfortunately learned the hard way, and that is to approach every single interview, every single phone call like it's a super day. So whether it's an introductory phone call or a final round interview, it is imperative that you do your research, you're sharp on your technicals, and you have at least 5 questions prepared. You may think this is a lot of work, but worst case scenario, you come into an interview and it ends and you were over prepared. I say that I learned from my mistakes with this tip because I had one introductory phone call where I absolutely got burned. It was actually with Truist, and it was an introductory phone call for the role that I actually ended up getting an offer for. This phone call was completely set up through myself. I had reached out to some other people who were in the position who went to UF, and they simply just said, oh, reach out to this guy. He'll be a great contact for you. It should be an easy, lighthearted conversation. So I went into the interview preparing for that. But a few minutes in, after the quick niceties, I was drilled with some technical investment banking questions, and I'll just be honest, I did not pass them with flying colors. These were all questions that honestly, if I was just in the right mental headspace or had just freshened up for 5 minutes before the interview, I would have been able to tackle, but I didn't do the correct preparations, and I went into the interview just expecting it to be an introductory phone call, and it burned me. I hated that feeling so much that from there on out, I vowed to always fully prepare to the best of my abilities for every single interview I had. This means doing your research on the company, look up the company culture, what are their core values, what's the hierarchy of the firm, what are some stories they've had in the news lately. Also, I said it before, but always have at least 5 questions prepared for your interviewer. I plan on making a video about this in the future, but it is so important to have questions at the end of interviews. And I think that the more personal the questions, the better. Now, no, this doesn't mean, oh, what was your hardest challenge growing up? This is more so looking at their LinkedIn profile, seeing, oh, they used to work for this company, now they work here, and then asking them a question about that transition. This shows that not only did you do your research, but you also looked them up and are very interested in their input. I truly do think that the more targeted the question, the better. And again, this all stems from doing that prep work beforehand. Next up, and is again something I learned the hard way, and that is to never be too confident. The job you're applying for never truly is in the bag or you're guaranteed to get, regardless of how well you think the interview went. It's so important to never put all your eggs in one basket. I've known people in my own life who had one interview with a company and it went so well that they stopped applying for other roles because they were so confident that they were going to get that offer. And what happens? They don't get it. So I know the adage is so old, but really, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Even if you aced an interview, stay applying for others. You definitely won't regret it. I certainly have a personal experience with this. Like I said, I interned with Regions Bank this last summer. A few weeks into the internship, I realized I was looking for a little bit more of a client-facing role and determined that I was going to apply for the investment banking coverage roles. I had networked so hard. I had talked to pretty much everyone in the organization, people from all different levels, analysts, VPs, MDs. I had done it all. I had then got invited to the Super Day, and I felt that I had crushed every single interview. Whether it was the conversationals or the technicals, I felt that I had done everything right. This was definitely a role that I was excited about. And again, because I thought I had done so well, I really was pretty committed to it. But lo and behold, 2 weeks went, I didn't hear back. And finally, I reached out again to the recruiter and still no answer. Finally, a few days later, I get an automated email saying that unfortunately, I did not get chosen for the role. This definitely was some pretty crushing news. Like I said, I was pretty committed to this job and I was already kind of planning my life around it. Everything happens for a reason. Obviously, I did not get this role, but like I said, this closed door opened up so many others. And as I mentioned before, I ended up getting an offer that I was even more excited about with a better company, better city, and really just a better outlook on my life. So I hope this story kind of just helps you realize that, no matter how well you think something went, never put all your eggs in one basket, continue applying to other roles. Best case scenario, you end up getting the job. Worst case scenario, you don't, and you at least apply to some other roles. So really can't emphasize it enough. Never be too confident. So going off that last piece of advice, I now have just 2 quick tips for interviews that I felt worked well with this video. The first is to be as friendly as possible. Obviously, you don't plan on going into an interview with a bad attitude, but it really just is so important to be friendly. And I don't mean just your normal friendly, I mean to be very friendly. From my experience, if you go out of your way to be friendly, people will often return the favor. Another quote from Ali Abdaal that I have said several times on this channel is, most people are nice. You just have to go first. The interviewer wants the conversation and the interview to go well just as much as you do. No one likes an awkward conversation, so they want the conversation to flow and to feel natural. So don't ever kind of think that they're trying to get you, because most of the times, if a conversation isn't going well, it's probably just because you weren't fully prepared or that you're honestly just too stressed out. So that's the first quick tip. Be as friendly as you possibly can. Second, it's okay to not know all of the answers. I think it's so important to never try to BS any answers, especially in technical interviews. You might think you can get away with it, but a good interviewer will ask follow-up questions to that, and especially if they could kind of get a sense that you are fudging the numbers, they'll then really dive deep into that, and by the end, it'll be pretty clear whether you know your stuff or not. If you approach this the right way, you can tell the interviewer, I don't know the answer, but I can talk you through how I would approach solving this question, which in the end, although you don't get the question right, at least you're not lying and trying to pose as someone you're not. The last thing I learned through this whole recruiting process is never give up. Trust me, I know it's super easy to get discouraged. Sometimes it feels that all the emails you get are simply just rejection letters. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many companies reject you. What matters is the one that accepts you. The same can be said for all aspects of life. It doesn't matter how many girls turn you away, it's all about the one that likes you back. And the same is definitely true for applying for jobs. There really are so many factors in this job application process that are fully out of your control. So it's really important that you control the controllables. These can be things like your attitude, your dress, and your preparedness for the interview. Outside of that, there's really not much you can control. You can't control the mood that your interviewer is in. You can't control the success of the company and whether they're gonna need 10 people in the role or 2. What you can't control is your attitude, your mindset, and how you prepare for these interviews. And remember, at the end of the day, you get rejected, there's always another job to apply for. I think my situation is definitely a good example of never giving up. I know I was very discouraged last year when I was applying for internships, and I didn't have a lot of success early on, but I definitely made sure to utilize kind of the lessons I learned through that and applied it to my recruiting for this current cycle. It really is a numbers game. I truly do believe at the bottom of my heart that if you work hard and you trust God, that everything will work out. This has certainly rang true in my own life up to this point, and I certainly plan on continuing to work hard and trusting God for the rest of my life, and I can't wait to see what's in store for me. With all of this said, that's going to wrap up the video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you got some value out of it. As always, if you have any questions at all, you can reach out to me on Instagram right here at Galbraith. Also, connect with me on LinkedIn. I've got a lot of you guys on there already, but I'd love to connect. And finally, one way to be super prepared for these interviews is to subscribe to The Morning Brew, a free daily business newsletter. I've been reading them for 3 years, and I honestly cannot recommend them more. The Morning Brew helped me so much through the entire application process. And with that being said, that's the video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it and got some value out of it. I wish you all the best of luck on your own endeavors, and I'll see you in the next one.